Welcome to the Sean Chandler Talks About Movies podcast, where I, Sean Chandler, talk about movies. Today is August 28th, 2017, and this is the first episode of the show. Hopefully it will be a good one. Today we're talking about the box office, and it is the worst weekend, or was the worst weekend in 16 years, since September 2001. Also, we got the first image of Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp. We're going to talk about that. Skrein drops out of Hellboy over claims of whitewashing. The Mummy has hit $400 million at the worldwide box office because of China, and Mark Webb is working on a Westboro Baptist movie. Likewise, I'm going to finish out with an editorial on the DCEU and how its reputation is totally shot. Anyway, but I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you, so be sure to join the discussion in the comment section on my YouTube page. Send me a tweet over on my Twitter account. It's Kirk Never Died. That's my handle, Kirk Never Died on Twitter, or follow me at Sean Chandler Talks About on Facebook. As always, this podcast is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Just like I mentioned before, this is the first episode, so I'm still kind of figuring things out. I'm open to suggestions. You can contact me very easily at any of the places I previously mentioned. I'm open to ideas for segments, topics, questions. I definitely could use some questions to answer some of those in future episodes as I kind of figure out this whole process. Also, the reason I decided to start today is over the weekend, my house was damaged with the bad weather. I live in Texas. I'm like 200 miles inland. I'm in the Austin area, but still we got really bad weather, tons of rain, really strong winds, and it knocked over my fence and blew a bunch of shingles off the roof of my house. And so my roof started leaking, which caused some roof damage. So right now upstairs, I've got 5 or 6 huge dehumidifiers upstairs where I normally shoot my videos. So that space is kind of not available. So I can more easily record a podcast in my room as I'm doing right now. So we get the first episode of the podcast actually about a week earlier than I was planning on doing this. Also, another fun thing that's coming that kind of lined up with all these different ingredients. I got some new equipment. Essentially, basically, I got an actual green screen. So instead of using a bunch of cardboard on my back wall, in my future videos, I will have an actual green screen behind me. So that's pretty exciting, and that's coming very soon. With all that said, let's start talking about movies. And our first topic of the day, as I mentioned before, is this was the slowest weekend at the box office in 16 years. Like the lowest amount that has been made since September 2011, the weekend just 10 days after the 9/11 attacks. That's how long it's been since the box office has been this slow. Actually, the top 12 only grossed $49.6 million. So, if you give me $49.6 million, I will be ecstatic. I will be very happy about it. I will gladly take your money. However, for the box office, that's crazy low. As a point of reference, just over a month ago, War for the Planet of the Apes came out. It only made about $55 million, and that was considered a huge disappointment. Now consider this weekend. If you take $49.6 million, divide it by 12 for the top 12 movies, the average for these movies was only $4.13 million per movie. Less than 1/10 of what that disappointment War for the Planet of the Apes made. If you look at it, the number one movie at the box office was The Hitman's Bodyguard with just $10 million, 1/5 of what War for the Planet of the Apes made. Annabelle Creation made $7.35 million. Leap, one of the new openings this weekend, only made $5 million. I mean, in many ways, you could look at this weekend and be like, it was a total disaster. And I read a couple articles trying to read some meaning into it about how this is society kind of culture saying, hey, we want better movies, a repudiation of the selections they've made with what's being released. And honestly, I don't think this weekend's box office means anything. It's interesting. It's very interesting to me because I'm actually kind of like analytics and numbers and stuff. So the fact that it's been since the 9/11 attacks that the box office has been this bad, that just interests me. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. But as for meaning as to why it happened, I think it's pretty obvious the specific ingredients that kind of played into it. But real quick to kind of walk through the 5 reasons that this happened. The first reason, the biggest factor as to why this recent weekend was so bad, is that late August is always a dead season at the box office. Just this time of the year, people don't go to the movies because it's right when school starts back up. So people get into new routines. Like for me, my kid just started kindergarten a week and a half ago. So we're just trying to get him back on normal routines and not freaking out. So we're not going to the movies with him. I haven't been to the movies in 2 weeks. This is the longest I've not gone to the movies kind of since I started this channel over a year ago. And so people just don't go to the movies this time of the year, so it's always a low spot. This weekend was always going to be one of the worst weekends of the year at the box office. That leads to the second reason, and it's very much a continuation of the first one, is that because people don't go to the movies this weekend of the year, Hollywood doesn't release significant movies this time of the year. And so this weekend had no significant releases. That's the second big reason. So you look at what came out this weekend. Leap came out, a movie that didn't have big box office. It's like 37% on Rotten Tomatoes. The few people I know that saw it seemed to like it, but I don't know very many people that went to go see it. I don't know anybody that was excited to go see it. Another one that came out, Birth of the Dragon. It's like a Bruce Lee movie, or it's about this kind of one event in Bruce Lee's life. Very small, like it was wide release, technically speaking, but a very limited wide release. Like 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. I went to their actual website to try and get some press information about them, see if they're doing any press screenings in Austin. The webpage for Birth of the Dragon is a Squarespace webpage. Like what I use for my webpage is what this movie used for theirs. That's not a good sign. They also put out Terminator 2 Judgment Day back in theaters in 3D this weekend. Very limited release once again. I wanted to go. My wife wanted to go. We looked into it. We're going to get a babysitter and everything. It's only playing at a theater at the exact opposite end of town. So you look at what came out, stuff that didn't have a lot of buzz and excitement for it. Terminator 2 re-released, very limited release, very few theaters. So you look at that. It's a weekend. Hollywood knew no one was going to go to the movies, so they didn't put anything out that people would rush out to go see at the movies. So those first two reasons are really the foundation for why this weekend was so bad. It was always going to be one of the lowest weekends of the year. Maybe some random weekend in January, maybe next weekend would have been the worst of the year, but this was always planned to be bad. So as I go into my next three reasons, with these, keep in mind, these didn't drop the box office by $20 million. They didn't Leap would have made $50 million, but because of these other things, it only made $5 million. No. These are only minor, kind of dropped off $3 million, $5 million, a couple million because of each one of these. But when the box office makes $200 million, $5 million at the box office is nothing. But when the box office is only $50 million and you drop $5 million off of it because of sporting events and TV shows and stuff like that, that's 10% of the box office. And when you're talking about getting down to the lowest, those little details actually matter. So as I talk about these next ones, it's not like I think they were gigantic influences that would have, shaped it on a different weekend. It's just because the box office was always going to be so bad this weekend. That's why these were such a big deal. So the third reason this weekend was really bad at the box office was just Hurricane Harvey. If you're in Texas, you know what I'm talking about, but it was really bad weather. So it hit right around Rockport, Texas, which isn't terribly far from Houston. And so the entire Houston area basically shut down. Devastating stuff happened there. But the effects of the storm kind of reached all the way to San Antonio, to Austin, to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So pretty much all the major parts of Texas kind of shut down because of bad weather. Some of them literally fully shut down. Austin area was more like, it's not a good idea to go outside. And that matters. That's over 10 million potential moviegoers who are very unlikely to go out to the movies because of the weather for a whole weekend. In a city with 4 million people in it that definitely were not going to the movies over this weekend. And so, 10 million potential moviegoers out of the potential 350 million in the United States isn't a ton of people, but when you're talking about only $50 million, that can be a significant percentage. Next thing that happened, reason number 4, is that there were new releases from Netflix and Amazon Prime, as well as the Game of Thrones finale. So I'm not normally one that would say that TV shows have a big impact on the box office, except weekends like this, like I said, where it's a small percentage. But if you look at it, Death Note came out on Netflix, which that's kind of the big movie that in the movie sphere people have been talking about, Death Note, this weekend. That's the one that seemed to be the most interesting to people. It's from director Adam Wingard. He did You're Next. He did Blair Witch. He did The Guest. So people have kind of been interested in him, and he's going to be doing Godzilla vs. King Kong in a couple years. So he's kind of one of these up-and-coming directors that people like to talk about what he's doing. So Death Note was the biggest, most, in the realm of discussion, biggest movie that came out this weekend. And so that kind of, where other movies might have gotten the discussion going on, they were all kind of focused towards Death Note. Now, it wasn't positive discussion because the movie hasn't particularly been well received by people, but that's what people were talking about. Likewise, the new TV show The Tick dropped on Amazon Prime. Now, this probably didn't draw millions and millions of people, but there's certainly a segment of people that's what they binge watched on Friday and Saturday. That's what I did. I didn't even mean to watch it. I just put on the first episode because I'd heard from Griffin from Men vs. Movies that it was good, so I decided to check it out and ended up binging the whole thing. Now, The Tick is based off of a comic from the 80s, and then it was also a cartoon in the 90s, and it was like I was the perfect age to love the Tick cartoon when it first came out. So there's a whole generation of people that were far more interested in the Tick TV show than they were about Leap or Birth of the Dragon. So that was kind of, obviously kind of drove the discussion Friday and Saturday. And then last night, Sunday night, the Game of Thrones finale came out. And of course, Game of Thrones being this cultural juggernaut just kind of ran over everything. And that's what people were talking about last night. The last reason that people didn't go to the movies this weekend was Floyd Mayweather versus Conor McGregor. Now, there's not a ton of it's not like sports events usually just kind of steamroll over movies. That doesn't normally happen. But this fight was way more interesting than anything at the theaters this weekend. Talked about way more than anything at the theaters this weekend. This is kind of a event promoter's dream to get a popular MMA fighter to fight Floyd Mayweather Jr. in a boxing match. That's a dream come true. I'm not a big follower of boxing or MMA. This is one I wanted to check out that I cared. I tried to stay off social media so I wouldn't have it spoiled for me. Still got spoiled for me, unfortunately. But really, if you take all those elements together, it's pretty obvious why this weekend just happened. The perfect storm, literally, to create an awful weekend at the box office, where it was always going to be one of the worst of the year. You add into that a massive storm, a big cultural event, like almost certainly the most interesting boxing match, probably the most interesting MMA fight of the year falls this weekend. The finale of one of the most interesting shows on television right now this weekend. You add that all together, you get the worst weekend at the box office. There's no kind of repudiation of Hollywood and what they're doing. It just kind of happened that way. So that's my take on it. Anyway, if you've got thoughts on it, tell me your thoughts over on Twitter. Tweet me. If I put this over on YouTube, go ahead and comment in the comment section there your thoughts on why was this weekend so bad. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Over there. Also, if you follow my channel any amount of time, you know that when I go to the movies, I pay for my movie tickets using MoviePass. It's a service where you pay one fee per month. For me, it was $45 for the last 6 months, and I thought that was a good deal because of the number of movies I went to go see every single month. They've dropped their price down to just $9.99 per subscription, and essentially you pay that one fee, and you can go to one movie every single day of the month, and it's covered by this fee. They send you a debit card in the mail. When you go to the theater, you got to buy your ticket at the theater. You use their app to select the movie. They put the money on the debit card. You swipe it. Works wonderfully. It's worked wonderfully for me. I've been using it for 6 months. It's been a very good service for me. They've been a little bit swamped over the last couple weeks because they've become so popular with this new price drop. They didn't realize how many people were going to sign up. So they've been a bit sluggish, but I've been using them for 6 months. I've had a very good experience. If that's something you might be interested in signing up for, look at the link in the description of the podcast for my affiliate link. Because I'm a big fan of them, because I talk about them a lot, I have become affiliate with them. It helps out my channel. It makes it so I can do this podcast. If you're interested, I'm only plugging them because I do use the service. If they stop being a good service, I will stop plugging them. So if this new $9.99 thing ruins their service, hey, I'll stop talking about it. But as for now, I'm a satisfied customer that has enjoyed them. This price point is just unbelievably good. If you like going to the movies, it's a must-have service. Please consider checking it out. With that said, let's dive into some quick movie news. So we got our first picture of Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp. So I looked at the picture, and for me, I don't tend to get super excited about most of these first look type pictures for events, for movies, because it's kind of like, okay, look, I know what she looks like. I know what a superhero costume in this decade looks like. I can't get too excited about it. It's not a bad picture. Some of the ones like with Entertainment Weekly and stuff like that and Empire Magazine, they're so photoshopped that they look ridiculous. This one looks like it's an actual frame from the movie. Looks pretty good. I don't have any strong thoughts on it, but it has been released, so if you want to take a look at it, go ahead and look at it. Second thing I want to talk about, Ed Skrein. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce his name. He was the bad guy in Deadpool. He was cast in the movie Hellboy just, I think, last week. And then today it was announced that he's dropped out of the movie over being accused of whitewashed casting. So apparently the character in the comic book, I'm not familiar with it, so I'm speaking from reading the articles on this. The character in the comics is of American Japanese descent. Ed is not at all. And so there's a big backlash when he was announced. And if you know anything about Hollywood these days or kind of the internet spectrum, there's a lot of debate over whitewashing in Hollywood, where it's very common for non-white characters to be cast by white actors to be cast as non-white characters in Hollywood movies. And it's becoming quite a discussion these days. And he got the target put on him, and so he backed out of the movie. For me, I got to applaud him for it. I'm not, by my nature, the first person to get too worked up about some of the... that's not my cause to stop whitewashing in Hollywood. I totally understand where people are coming from. By my nature, I'm not the person that I don't immediately get offended by that. But what I do respect is when someone, if that's kind of, they realize they made a mistake, they realize they're part of the problem, and they decide to own it and fix it. One of the things that really bothers me about Hollywood is that Hollywood proclaims itself and pats itself on the back for being incredibly progressive and just how far to the left they are. Like, they congratulate themselves constantly for how progressive they are. And then all of these very rich celebrities with lots of power and resources are the ones taking these roles where it's whitewashing. They're the ones doing it and then going in interviews explaining why they're not part of the problem. And that really bothers me when I see things like that, or when some of these people are congratulated for how progressive, how feminist, or what kind of, pick your thing, they are. And then they're the one that takes the role where they're whitewashed, or any of the other modern cultural targets for these types of things. That really bothers me. And so the fact that he would acknowledge this and say, hey, I didn't realize what I did. I'm backing out. I don't want to be a part of the problem. That's integrity to me. That's someone standing up for what they believe in, trying to do the right thing, and trying to solve a problem. And so kudos to him. And like I said, I don't know the source material, but as for the choice he made, I think it is a good one. Next topic of the discussion, The Mummy. Because of the Chinese box office, because of their love for Tom Cruise, has somehow hit 400 million worldwide. So this movie opened in the US and kind of just like tanked. It was just attacked, like eviscerated by the critics, and then it did not do well at all in theaters. I went to go see it. I mean, it was a fun bad. I wasn't bored. I didn't hate the experience, but it was a mess. I mean, tone all over the place, things that didn't belong, mismatch of all sorts of stuff. And then, it just kind of disappeared from theaters really quickly. And so a lot of us were kind of thinking, does this mean that whole Dark Universe thing is kind of coming to a close? Is that thing done? Because it did so bad. Nope. It's doing just fine globally because of China. And boy, do they love Tom Cruise. And there's a lot of talk about how here in the United States, we're past the era of the movie star. It's not true globally. Movie stars can still sell movies some places, in particular some of these just like solid leading men that have been around a long time, solid leading ladies that have been selling tickets for a long time. They still sell tickets around the world. They are still quality brands somewhere in the world, even for movies like The Mummy. It's just kind of funny to me just how radically different taste in movies are depending on where you are in the world. And how some of that works out, like how just trashed and destroyed the Transformers movies have been in the United States since like the first one, and how the box office for them pretty quickly started to drop. And it went up in other places in the world. Same with Pirates of the Caribbean, where it started strong and went in the U.S. kind of tanked, but still strong around the world because of Johnny Depp. So fascinating to me. But, you know, the next one of those that we see, The Mummy, trashed in the U.S., 400 million worldwide because it made so much money in China. Last big topic or quick news topic of the day, Mark Webb is working on a movie version of Westboro Baptist, the church, or at least the story of the daughter of Fred Phelps there. Fred Phelps, is that right? The lead pastor that started the church there. If you don't know what this is the most vile, sick, disgusting church in the United States. And they have been for a long time. Their website for a long time, for all I know, still to this day, is, and I'm very sorry for saying this as a word I wouldn't normally say, but it is the name of their website. There was godhatesfags.com. And intentionally trying to be inflammatory. These are people that protest at the funerals of soldiers because they believe it's condemnation of America for tolerating homosexuals. That they've protested the death of homosexuals, anything that's inflammatory, that's just disgusting, actual full-on, indefensible, hate-filled behavior. That's what they've been doing for a long time. And they are just vile. If you've been listening to me on my YouTube channel any amount of time, you know I'm a Christian. I was a pastor at a church for 8 years, and a youth pastor there. And so as a church, we just detested this church and vile. And Mark Webb is making a movie about the church because the daughter of the founder of the church basically left. Two of the family members left the church 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so there's kind of been a split in that regard. The daughter of the lead guys also kind of still runs things. Fascinating story of hate, awfulness. But the nature of this family and their impact to culture and how even though there's only 100 of them, they're like screaming hate so loud that they've been noticed. Mark Webb wants to make a movie out of this. For me, I get really nervous about it. In particular, as a Christian, I'm pretty I don't trust Hollywood to represent my faith well. I don't trust them to adequately draw lines and acknowledge the fact that there's no churches that line up with Westboro Baptist. It says Baptist in the name, the Southern Baptist, whatever Baptist convention you want to mention. All of them disown them. They're all like, get away from us. We're disgusted by you. I get really nervous about Hollywood telling this story because I just don't know that they'll accurately represent the reality of the situation, which they're so far outside of any spectrum. They are distant. So I don't know. Maybe they will. There's a very potentially very interesting story to be told in there because the church has been around a long time. People have left. Some of them have stayed. Like this church makes parody songs. I used to go to their website actually a lot because they would do these parody songs and they would take hit Taylor Swift songs and they would make them into these just hate-filled, just unbelievably offensive. Sometimes they'd have do kids bop versions of pop songs with children singing horrible hate-filled things, and it's awful. It was disgusting. It was offensive. But it's really funny because of how just disturbing it was. You just only could listen to it and be like jaw drop, like I don't know what I'm watching, listening to it right now. And I'm sure they still have it up on their website. Really messed up stuff, but so fascinating. The existence of this church and just the brainwashing going on. So there is potentially a good story there. Mark Webb, I really like Gifted. I really liked 500 Days of Summer that he did. Not so much Amazing Spider-Man 2, but I think this guy's got potential to do some really good stuff. Hopefully he can do something good with this story. Now, before we go into my final editorial piece to close this deal out, I want to tell you the biggest single thing that you can do to support my channel is to support my channel on Patreon. So this podcast is brought to you essentially because of the support of my patrons. I've been talking to them a little bit about starting this podcast for 3 months now, 2-3 months now, just kind of discussing it over there individually with some of them, if they thought it was a good idea. And because they're not an obvious, easy way to monetize doing a podcast, they're really the ones that support this, make this possible, that I can put the time into it and kind of expand my channel, talk about movies. If you don't know what Patreon is, essentially it's a way for you to directly financially support what I'm doing with Sean Chandler Talks About, whether the YouTube channel or doing this, writing for Men vs. Movies, all those different things. If you want me to keep doing that, if you want me to support what I'm doing, expand what I'm doing, the single greatest thing you can do is head on over there and support me on Patreon. And so I'm starting to put more content over there, some behind the scenes stuff, some additional reviews, giving them extra input into what I talk about here on the podcast, or preferential treatment in the questions that are asked. So if you want kind of the inside scoop on my channel, more access to me, and some input into what goes on with the channel, and really just to help me out with what I'm trying to do here, please consider going over to Patreon, supporting me over there. That way that I can keep doing what I'm doing and feed my kids at the same time. Both of them, two wonderful things that I would like to be able to continue doing. Now let's move into our final segment here. What I want to do is talk about the DCEU, the DC Extended Universe, and how their reputation is shot. It's really been shot for a long time. We fooled ourselves into thinking things were getting better because of Wonder Woman and it actually being good and being well received by critics, fans, and being kind of an important movie in its own way for a lot of people. So we thought for a little bit, hey, they're pulling it together. They're making a lot of sense. And then the news started to come out again, and we were reminded, oh yeah, I don't know what's going on with the WB. I don't know why they can't pull this thing together, but it's a total mess over there. So if you've been following my YouTube channel, you know back in January I was doing daily movie news videos, and almost multiple stories every single week. So almost every other day, every 3 days, there was a new story about the DCEU and how Ben Affleck might not direct the Batman. Ben Affleck says he's definitely directing the Batman. Ben Affleck has announced he's not directing the Batman. Like back and forth, kind of crazy stories. We're doing a Nightwing movie. We're going to do a Green Lantern movie. So many announcements about different projects every single week. Directors dropping out of The Flash, rejoining The Flash, new writers for The Flash, page one rewrite for The Flash. Constant new announcements. And all of it unclear as to which ones are definitely happening, which ones aren't happening, which ones are official rumors. And they officially announced that The Rock is Black Adam 3 years ago. And then just this year, they're like, hey, we are definitely doing a Shazam movie. The Rock's not in it. And then it's part of like a separate DC universe. I mean, so many weird announcements. And then last week happened. So what happens last week? Well, one day they announced they're doing a Joker origin movie with Todd Phillips, the director of Old School, I believe, Road Trip, the Hangover movies, War Dogs. He will be directing a Martin Scorsese-produced Joker origin story. You know, I read that article and I was like, are you kidding me? This is the weirdest announcement I've ever heard. And it's not part of the DCEU. So you can just go through each and every one of those pieces. A Joker movie. That doesn't seem like a very good idea to me because the Joker works as kind of the antithesis to Batman. He's the yin to the yang, whatever analogy you want to use. They're opposites. That's why they're interesting. He exists as a counterbalance to Batman. Not a character supposed to be on his own. So, okay, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Joker origin story? Even worse idea. Part of what makes the character interesting is the ambiguity of his origins, that he's chaos, that it's unclear exactly what's kind of going on here. That's, once again, kind of the counterbalance to Batman, where we know his origin, his psychology, what's driving this. That's what makes him interesting. Part of the intrigue of the Joker is that it's far less defined. It's not as easy to know exactly kind of what's going on. There's not the one story in the comic books as to his origin, and that's kind of what makes him interesting. That's weird. Todd Phillips directed. Okay, maybe if you were going to do this story, that's not a horrible pick. I don't hate that. Martin Scorsese produced, and that's the one where a bunch of people were like, oh, this is awesome. A Martin Scorsese Joker movie? And that's the way they would phrase it. Martin Scorsese doing a Joker movie? Like, wait. He's producing it for Todd Phillips. Todd Phillips is not like this up-and-coming director who can be pushed around by a producer, by guys in the studio. He can't just be pushed around. This guy's the real deal. He has clout. He has power. He has opinions. So how does that mesh with Martin Scorsese? Like, I just don't like these two styles. I don't see it. So I don't know what that means. And so I don't just immediately go, oh, Martin Scorsese, wow, that's really interesting. I go, huh? How does this all go together? And then they say it's not part of the DCEU, which if the DCEU had a great track record, and I'll get to this in just a moment, if they had a great track record, if they had a great reputation, hey, I'd be going along with you. I get it. But they don't. They haven't earned my trust. So when I hear weird stuff that I go, I can trust you. So that's piece number one. Then the next day, there's another report that they're working on a Jared Leto starring, Jared Leto's not going to be in the Origin movie one. Jared Leto starring Joker and Harley Quinn movie. Totally separate from the movie we just talked about, and totally separate from the Gotham Sirens movie. So in the span of 2 days, we got rumor mill, and not from just like wacky, non-legit sources, like Hollywood Reporter level, legitimate sources indicated Joker Origin movie and Joker Harley Quinn movie. They didn't have too much information about it, but just like, that's weird. That's weird that these rumors are kind of spreading out there. And then last week, there were also these kind of back and forth. Gotham Sirens is canceled. No, Gotham Sirens is a real deal. Joker and Harley Quinn is not Gotham Sirens. They're both like reports kind of separate from each other. Then we get this report or this quote from the Batman from the director, Matt Reeves, saying that the Batman is not a part of the extended DC universe. So, of course, the internet blows up with opinions on this. He gets on Twitter the next day and goes, whoa, sorry, guys. Oops. Didn't mean what I said. It, of course, is part of the extended universe. It's just a standalone story that doesn't tie into the extended story. I get to tell my own story that doesn't tie in a bunch of characters. Likewise, 2 weeks ago, there was the Casey Affleck quote where Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck's brother's like, yeah, I guess he was okay in the Batman. I don't think he's doing the Batman movie. Wait, is that breaking news? I didn't know. All this is weird. It's weird. And I love to get into online debates with people. So I'm joining some comment sections where some people have been like, what's the big deal? I don't understand why people are making such a big deal out of all this. And likewise being like, see, the director clarified. This is just all of these reporters trying to get clicks, running with headlines. It's not about WB screwing up. Like I was debating with a guy saying WB has done nothing wrong. That's not true. That's not true. See, here's the deal. If you have a solid reputation, if you had solid leadership, if you have someone strongly steering the ship and guiding things, we trust you when wacky things are announced that you'll address it. You will tell us what's coming out. We'll have a good idea kind of where things are headed, what's going on. Like we feel like someone's steering the ship. And you don't have that with the WB at all. Because you have full-on legitimate situations where in 1 month, rumors, quotes made it sound like Ben Affleck was dropping out. Then Ben Affleck said on Jimmy Kimmel, I am directing the Batman. And then 2 weeks later, he dropped out. You have definitive things like that where they have just lost all trust, faith, grace from us, the audience. We can't trust them anymore. They don't say true things. They don't report things ahead of it. See, like when bad things happen, if you own it and make a statement about it and kind of treat it normally, we can trust you to handle things when they happen. If someone is presenting, here's our plan for the next 4 years. This is the slate. This is the thing to trust. Anything else you hear, rumors, yeah, we're always thinking about stuff. But this is the slate for the next few years. When that happens, we trust you, especially if you continually stick with it. And that's what we've seen with Marvel and the MCU and Kevin Feige. Now, I don't mean to just always draw comparisons, but that when we have such a clear point of reference of there's a guy steering the ship, clearly making announcements of what is coming, sticking to it, and we can trust what they're saying. And there aren't a bunch of weird rumors. Like, we don't have a bunch of rumors about what movies are and aren't coming with the MCU. Nothing that sticks. And that's the problem. Like I said, I used to be a youth pastor, and so I would teach teenagers all the time about reputation. I would say, the question you need to ask yourself is, what sticks? What rumors about you could stick? Like, if someone said you're doing black tar heroin, that's the example I always use. Would people think that's the craziest thing they've ever heard? Or would they hear that and could be like, yeah, he's been doing some horrible stuff. He would do something that crazy. And you can just go down the line. Does it stick? That's what speaks to your reputation. And crazy rumors don't stick to the MCU. Crazy rumors stick to the DCEU. And they have for a long time because they've mishandled things so poorly. They've handled things so poorly, mishandled them so greatly. And just what happened in January just shouts, no one is guiding things. What happened last week shouts, no one's steering this thing. In the span of 2 weeks, we had two different people making quotes that had us thinking, I guess that means Ben Affleck is out. Two people that we would hear them and go, that person, I would put some weight in Ben Affleck's brother and the director of the movie. People misspeak, odd quotes, strange things being said, weird rumors, a bajillion projects just being announced. Like, everything they've ever brainstormed seems to be leaked to legitimate sources. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know why they have so many leaks. I don't know why Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck, Matt Reeves keep saying stupid stuff to reporters and to podcasts. I don't know what's going on. But the DCEU and the WB, they've lost my trust. I do not trust them in how they're handling things. Maybe a movie will be good. That's not to say that a movie can't be good. Maybe Justice League will be incredible. I do not trust them as an entity to accurately communicate what's going on because stuff sticks. Rumors stick. Speculation sticks. They've botched a lot. It sticks. I don't trust them. Anyway, that is our very first episode of the Sean Chandler Talks About Movies podcast. Thank you guys so much for joining in, listening to it. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. That's Kirk Never Died. Kirk from Star Trek. Kirk Never Died. That is a comment about the movie Generations. Kirk Never Died on Twitter. Sean Chandler Talks About on Facebook as well as YouTube. Follow me over there. If you like this podcast, if you like what I'm doing, be sure to rate it as well as leave a review of it. That's kind of the algorithm for how I get ranked better on YouTube, on iTunes, so more people can discover this podcast, so we can keep this thing growing. As I said before, I don't want to just talk about movies. I want to talk about movies with you. So join me on all the discussion forums. Tweet me, message me, Facebook me, comment at me, all that fun stuff. And thank you guys so much for watching. Wait, you're not watching. This is a podcast. For listening. Still trying to figure out this podcasting. It's a little bit different. So I'm going to say a few stupid things from time to time. There you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. There you